I'm pleased to introduce RPAG's Vice President of Institutional Client and Member Relations, Jeff Cheshier, who will present the Practice Management Virtual Workshop. Jeff?
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I know your time is valuable. We're going to talk a little bit about finding out how valuable that time is today. It's tough. I know it is so hard to take time to spend on your business because you've got to get out of business or out of your business and stop spending time in your business to spend time on the business, but it's critical. I know the temptation is always that, man, I've got these fires to put out right now. I will do that later. A industry colleague who I really admire reminded me recently that later is Latin for never. So at some point, you've just got to say, okay, I'm going to do this, even though I know it's hard. About 15 years ago, 17 years ago, I had a brief foray into the residential construction business as a general contractor. I had just gotten out of business school. I had 7 years of industry experience in financial services. And man, I was just going to light the world on fire. I got a little bit of free advice early on that unfortunately I didn't pay close enough attention to until it was too late. The first piece was know your numbers. You've got to know your numbers. And the second piece was watch those nickels and pennies. And again, I was not humble enough to accept that wisdom, and things didn't work out the way I was hoping. So I found a short video to kind of illustrate the know your numbers component that we'd like to play. And then we're going to get in and roll up our sleeves and do some work. Also, if you have not yet gotten a chance to print out the worksheets that I emailed to you, please do that. This is going to be a session where hopefully you're going to be working along with me to help polish some lenses on how to look at your business and find out where it is that you want to take your business. So David, can we go ahead and watch that video?
Yes, certainly. Let me pull it up.
It's time for us to sit down. I want to see the financials.
Do you have the financials?
What are we going to do? We have bills to pay.
How much cash do you have in the bank right now, in the business? There are three important numbers that I want you to know. Your annual sales revenue, based on a trailing 12 months, not the calendar.
You definitely have a revenue problem because in this size of a place, you should be doing well over $630,000 a year.
I want you to know your gross profit margins.
What does it cost to make a sheet like that?
$80.
Well, how many does that sheet break down into?
Roughly 70 bags.
What will you sell that bag for?
It comes to $6 a bag.
So the margins are good.
And I want you to know what your expenses are as a percentage of your gross profit, not a percentage of your sales.
Okay, so that's 12 cents. 83 cents for the barbecue. So your food costs are actually closer to 61%. 20% on $1 million is $200,000 in profit. She's gone.
You pay your bills with gross profit, not with revenue.
There was some terminology in there that are critical to running a good business. Your gross profit, your margins, your how you pay expenses. And so those are some things that we want to look through today. And so let's go ahead and pull up the first page. And so what the first thing I want you to do on this sheet before you write anything is, if you've got a red pen handy, that would be great, but any pen will be fine. Divide that into 3 columns and then go ahead and draw 2 red X's where we see on the screen. The left-hand column will have a red X in current billable hourly rate. The hours per year will have a red box in the middle column. And so if we were at a cocktail reception and I said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Advisor, what is your billable hourly rate? Is that a number that you've got off the top of your head? And what is that number? Well, that's a number that includes all of your overhead, your employee expenses, your service team, as well as your sales team. It's got to include pay for you. And then we need a good 20, 30% extra for the house. Because if you aren't building in that percentage for the house, you're not a business owner. You are the most underpaid, stressed out, unhappy employee on your team. And that's not good for you. It's not good for your team. And it's not good for your clients for sure. So this is the first of several, again, metrics that we're going to use. And I got these from my friend, Randy Fuss, who is at CUNA Mutual. He's done some really good work in this area. And he's a certified practice management coach. So again, this is just going to be some tools that we're going to work through today. And so the first two columns really are going to be some example columns that I'm going to give you some sample numbers on. And then that third column, that's the scary one. That's the one where after the call at some point, you're going to take some time and figure out what numbers that are for your practice go in those lines. And that's going to reveal what your billable hourly rate is currently. And once you know that, then you can start taking steps to get your billable hourly rate where you want it to be. And so a standard billable hourly rate to target for is $300 per hour. Now, I've spoken with some advisors who have done some very serious digging and calculating on this topic, and they suggest that 350 is a better number, but industry average will start with 300 and see where we can get on that. Now, I created a sample book of business to use for the examples on these first two columns, and that consists of 20 plans. So it's a book. I'm going to run down the numbers real quick. You don't need to write this down. If you are interested in knowing what the numbers are that I used for this, I'm happy to share that with you. But I used our RPAG fee calculator based on various plan sizes. And then we also have some estimated or average hours per year of service based on plan size is from Ann Schleck. So this again is this book, the sample book has 20 plans in it, a total of $73 million in assets under influence, $303,000 in revenue annually, and the average plan size is $3.65 million. Now, I included 10 plans that were $1 million in size, 7 plans that are $4 million, 2 plans that are $10 million, and one $15 million plan. And so now let's go ahead and start writing some of these sample numbers in. So the first one on both lines is going to be $303,000 in revenue. Again, this is based off of the RPAG fee calculator and some kind of standard assumptions. Our next number that we're going to look at is 644 hours per year. Again, I went through Ann Schleck's average time spent by plan size and applied that to each one of the plans in my sample book that I built. And that came out with 644 hours per year to service a 20 plan book. And then the last non-variable that we have here is on the second column, go ahead and put $300 per hour. And so what we're going to do is just some really simple math here to find out in the first example, if your revenue is $303,000 per year on these 20 plans, and you're spending 644 hours to properly service these plans, what does that give us for a billable hourly rate? Well, $470. I don't know about you, but that sounds fantastic. But then what is the question? The question is, are we able to provide an adequate level of service to all of our clients in only 644 hours through the course of a year? Now, the problem with working with averages is, we all know you can drown in a river that's an average depth of 3 inches. Averages like this include advisors who are providing your level of service to your clients, but it also includes those advisors that are providing basically no service. So it's tough to benchmark yourself on averages because the level of service can vary so much. Now, let's look at the second one. So we take $303,000 and divide that by a desired billable hourly rate of $300 per hour. What's that going to give us? A little over 1,000 hours in a year. That sounds much more doable, doesn't it? All right. Well, again, the same question is right after that. Can you, with these 20 clients in 1,000 hours in a year, provide the level of service that they're used to, that you want to provide, that somebody thinks that they need? And breaking that 1,000 hours down, that's an average of 50 hours per plan per year, which then breaks down to 4.2 hours per month. So are you able to properly service your book of business if you've got 20 plans in 4 hours per client per month? Now, again, until we really start digging, it's kind of tough to know what that is. You've got to do a little bit of research. Another side item before I move on is we're always looking for gears and levers to pull, right? To tune our machine to where we want it. So a good way to raise that billable hourly rate, one way is if you can raise revenue faster than you're raising your time requirements. And one of the most popular ways, more and more every day with our RPAG members, is through what the concept we call of adjacent revenue. And so if you've got the trust of decision makers on the retirement side, you're going to have the trust of those decision makers in other areas that they make decisions. And so I don't know that if it's ever been as critical before as it is now. Executive benefits, non-qualified plans. We're in the middle of a talent, not battle, but talent war, trying to find and keep top talent. There's a reason it's top talent. It's because they do a really good job and everybody wants them. And with inflation, I don't have to tell you all the reasons that this is critical. The big hurdle that we hear from our RPAG members who are retirement specialists is that they're intimidated by the prospect of having to learn an entire new line of business and product, as well as they know retirement business and non-qualified business, executive benefits. That can get real tricky real quick. So what we at RPAG have done is try to knock that barrier down with a group that we refer to as RPAG EB, or RPAG Executive Benefits. So we've got a team, several members over the course of or throughout the country, who are positioned to help you as much or as little as you need or want. And what most of the advisors who are retirement specialists that are not non-qualified specialists do is it's not hard to learn just a few questions to ask your client or things to listen for as you're in a meeting with your client that they may bring up, where there's an opening for you to say, well, what are you doing to make sure that your top talent isn't going to your competitor a few miles down the road for an extra $10,000 or $20,000 a year? Who, when you get back from this meeting that you, Mr. Plan Sponsor, and me, Miss Advisor, are having, you get back to your office, there's a resignation letter on your desk. Who can that absolutely not be from? And what are you doing to make sure that letter does not wind up on your desk? And if that hook sets, at that point, all your client needs to know is that just as you bring resources and expertise on the qualified plan side, you've got a team behind you that can do that same exact thing on the non-qualified and executive benefits program. And you're solving problems for them, which again moves you closer and closer to being on the same side of the desk as your client, as a business consultant and not just the retirement plan person. So if you ever have any questions about that, shoot an email to me, give me a call, and I'm happy to tell you about how that works. So let's move on to our next lens. So if you were to go down this first column that says self and mark all the things that you as either a business owner or a practice leader do, I would guess that there are going to be some things, there are definitely going to be some things in there that you can do better than anybody else, either in your organization or partners that you have outside of your organization. A finals presentation. That's a pretty good example where you're going to do better probably than anybody else on your team. But there's other things in here that would be just as well, if not better, done by someone on your team. And similarly, things that can be done either outsourcing to a paid partner or to a partner that wants your business for other reasons, but has built value adds in. So I'd like to go through just a couple of examples of how to do this. And I would like to, if anybody enjoys going to Vegas or wherever your favorite casino is, if you've ever played roulette, think of this almost as a roulette table where you can split bets between columns. So it doesn't have to be only one X in one box. You can kind of split those. So I've got 5 arrows on the screen here that have just pulled together some examples of what I'm speaking of. So the first one, on the prospecting side, is the best use of your time going through and grabbing plan data of plans that you want to call on and aggregating, sorting, getting that all organized and ready to call out on? Probably not. Larkspur Executive and Plan Fees are two excellent resources that you have access to at RPAG that can lift that off of your plate. So when you start, find all the X's that are under self and look at them and find what are some X's in this column that I can move to the right to get somebody else doing so I can focus on the activities that I bring the best set of resources to the table of anybody in my organization. We're trying to sift out that sand that other folks can do. Another example, cold calling and appointment setting. That may be your jam, and if so, God bless you. For most people, that phone gets used to say the phone gets real heavy, but most people don't actually have a phone anymore. It's all this, but I guess that screen gets hard to push for dialing. I don't know. PT Services is a group that we're not, it's not a group that we own. It's an outside business partner, but I've been with this group for 15 years with RPAG. And when I started, PT Services was a partner of ours in the broader organization. And you've probably heard of calling services. You may have even worked with some. Common feedback I get from a lot of other non-PT services groups is they charged me for a meeting that I showed up to and the person canceled. I get there, the people have no idea who I am, what I'm there for, and it was worthless. Do they give me a refund? No. They say, well, we'll just set another appointment for you instead. And yeah, if you've ever chased that rabbit, it's impossible to catch a lot of times. I have never heard any of that feedback from PT Services. The feedback I get from our advisors who work with them is that the meetings are qualified. They work with you. The key to success with PT Services, I'm learning, is for you, the advisor, to spend time before you go to those meetings in PT Services training. They've built this entire training module on how to make the most of a meeting with somebody who you haven't dealt with in the past. It's an appointment that they have set, and the advisors who go through and focus on that. I have a fellow I'm working with right now who's just had his first couple of meetings. The people he sat down and the folks said, well, frankly, the only reason I took this meeting was so they would stop calling me. We have a plan. We're fine. But because he had been through this training and paid attention, he was ready to pivot and say, man, that is awesome. I'm so glad your partner is doing this for you. We're here. Can I spend 5-10 minutes just, asking you some questions and about what your current service looks like, and maybe tell you a little bit about what we do. And because of that turned into a warm prospect, and they're open to moving forward. So PT Services is a great firm. They're good people. They're out of Pittsburgh, and their average employee tenure is nearly 20 years. And you do not get that with a lot of appointment setting services. It's a good organization. If that's a need of yours, worth taking a look at. Again, prospect meetings.
Hi, Jeff.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Looks like we have a question in the chat regarding PT services. Okay. It says, do you know of any other resources other than PT? Unfortunately, there's another firm and they can't use PT at this time.
Okay, so I've got a two-part answer to that. One, I don't, but PT also, this leads to my second part of the question. One of the benefits I would say of PT Services is that they are not going to be calling for appointments for you and 5 of your competitors in the same area. They do restrict that. So if they've got someone who they're looking to set retirement business appointments for in your area, they will put you on a waiting list, but they are not going to be calling for you and them. However, what a workaround that we've found quite a bit is that they do appointment setting for lots of different types of business. So ones off the top of my head are, in addition, you've got retirement. They do appointment setting for executive benefits and non-qualified that we talked about. They do appointment setting for benefits. I believe they do appointment setting for wealth management. And so if you're a diversified practice and have any of these other business lines, that can be your workaround. And once you're in the meeting, then you can start talking about retirement if you want. But that's that's kind of a two-edged sword. You don't want them making appointments for you and other folks, but if your slot is tied up on the retirement side, I know they're happy to put you on the list and maybe talk about any other business lines that you have. Any other questions at the moment, David?
It looks like we're all set for now. Thanks,
Perfect.
Jeff.
Thank you. Investment recommendations and implementation. So this is an area where in one activity, there's probably different parts of it you can striate, and there are parts of it that are worth your time, parts of it your team can work on, and parts that you can outsource. So in the investment recommendation, have your team run those RPAG scorecard reports. If you've got a team that can help with that, that's not probably the best use of your time. Then you deliver it with the client. And once the client's on board, you've got your partners who hopefully will help you on the implementation side. So again, just looking for areas that you're able to whittle away your time. One of the most successful retirement advisors that we have took a book of business from, I think, a little under 100 million in assets to, I want to say 15, 20 billion just in a few years. And I did an interview with him one time, just kind of asking, what is your key to success? And he had a few, but one of them was, and this was before Donald Trump ever even, anyone considered, I don't know if he'd thought about politics or not, but this is before he was controversial. He said, I like to look in the mirror every morning and do my best Donald Trump and say, you're fired. What do you mean? You look at yourself in the mirror and say you're fired. He said, man, I have found what the highest and best use of my time is. And every day I want to find one activity that is not that I can turn over to somebody on my team or a partner or somebody else and fire myself from that. That frees up more time for me to do what I enjoy in the business and what I'm good at in the business. So, try to fire yourself from as much as you can here. And then there's other areas like this last one that everybody on the team needs to be involved in. So spend some time, go through there, be honest with yourself. What are you spending time on? And then look at the things, which of these items can I move to the right side of this sheet and how? Okay. Critical item, make sure you don't get paid less than what your billable hourly rate is. Once you know what that billable hourly rate is, you can then figure out what you want it to be. And then you've got to figure out how to get there. That's the previous screen. Well, now we're going to take a look at specific plans. So at some point, got to go through plan by plan. And there's a few critical numbers here. So revenue, not too hard to figure out. I've got $10,000 a year coming in on this. What is my desired billable hourly rate? $300 per hour. So that right there tells you how many hours per year you can spend servicing this client. And the key again to this is you got to get good information in. We all know garbage in, garbage out. So now that I know what the time limit is, what am I spending time on? Well, the worksheet on that page gives you a lot of good ideas. And again, you've got to be honest, not only me, but my team collectively, how many hours per year are we spending on each one of these things? Once you know that, then you can target which ones it's most important to go back to the previous page and start moving those activities to the right. None, some, most, or all of me. So on this page, we want to go through and on each one of these squares, whether it's for you in a finals presentation, how much of me is the client getting? I would want to say in a prospect meeting or a finals meeting, you're getting all of me. But there's other areas in here, the data aggregation on prospecting, that should probably be none of you. And so all of these areas, this can either be a reality check on what the actuality is, and then go through and set what your goals are. What are some areas where I've got an A right now that I need to get an S or an M, maybe even an N? Again, not difficult concepts, a lot harder to sit down and really figure out what this information is, but it goes back to spending time on your business and not in your business. and it's tough. I'll do it later. And we've already talked about what later is Latin for. So just got to do it. Last slide in worksheet, profitability profile. So each one of your clients, you want to chart on a sheet like this. How much time is required to service this client? Are they easy peasy or a small client? And they don't want to meet more than once a year. They never call. Well, that's going to be low on the time requirement. And then, relatively speaking, is their revenue low or high? And for each one of these quadrants, again, it's going to help you know where you are and where you want to move to. And we've got some tips for each one, or for clients in each one of these quadrants. So if you have a client that is low revenue and high time, obviously that's going to be one that's probably going to be in danger of you're charging less than what your billable hourly rate is. So how can we fix that? Well, we can charge more. Or we can decrease the amount of time behind the scenes that we're spending. And you have to do a value judgment on, is this a client that we want to keep? Because right now we're probably underwater. And if we do want to keep them, either one of these, both of them. Funny anecdote that I heard from an advisor a while back that I love telling this story. He said every year at their office Christmas party, part of the activities was they got to nominate a small handful of clients that they really would prefer not to have. And they got to vote as a company on one client to fire. So, maybe that's your situation. Maybe you want to hold on to them. I don't know. And firing is a harsh word. You find someone who can provide service that they expect at the price they expect to pay. So, you help build some referrals there. Next quadrant, high revenue, high time. That's okay. Yeah, especially our high revenue clients, we kind of expect that. We're going to get good revenue, but man, it takes a lot of time to properly service those clients. So the key is to make sure that they know everything that you're doing for them. Because what you don't want to have happen is have one of your competitors come in and say, oh, you're paying this advisor $50,000 a year. We'll do it for 40. Well, at that point, you want your client to say, okay, well, these are all the things that my advisor does. Are you going to do all of these things too? And be sure and get that in writing. So again, and we are in the business of making things look easy to our clients. I would say it's almost like an annual review. 364 days a year, keep your head down, do your work, try to make it look easy. One day a year, brag on yourself. Make sure they know everything you're doing and that you're earning every penny that they're paying you. Next quadrant, low revenue, low time. Maybe low revenue, but that's all right. It's not taking up a ton of your time, and you could have a very balanced billable hourly rate with these clients. If you want to do anything, maybe add a little bit of service, and that will position you either to hold on to that client more, or maybe even be able to increase your billing a little bit. Now, this last one is a little tricky. We look at it and the knee-jerk response is, man, I don't have to spend any time and they're giving me a lot of revenue. Make every client like that. I'll take them. Well, it is awesome, but that is potentially a super high risk client because it is easier for a competitor to come in, replicate the service that you're providing and charge less. So what are some strategies here? Well, you don't want to charge less. Nobody wants to do that. Hey, I'll take a pay cut. Is that cool? No. Find some value to add to that client, some ways that it'll pressure your billable hourly rate down a little bit, but it's going to help shore up that client and make sure that high level of revenue is coming in. David, I believe that is about all I've got here. Do we have any other questions that have come in that we want to take a look at?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. We do have a couple questions. The first one, where can advisors find more information on PT services?
Sure. Shoot me an email, give me a call, or drop an email to our service team. I believe that is support@rpag.com. And that will get you funneled to me, and I'll make the connection with you and kind of answer any questions you've got and get you connected and off through the races.
Awesome. And we have another question in our Q&A section. So it says, being realistic with COVID, the past 2 years, we're barely spending 3 or 4 hours per client, and they pay us around $10,000 to $30,000 per year. Hard to make them care about what we do when they are more focused on what brings in their own revenue.
That's facts. That's real. Absolutely. And so now, probably more than ever, we have to be reactive to what our clients need and want. Everybody has moved way down Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid. We're no longer focused on whether our temperature in our room is 72 degrees or 72 and a half degrees. It's, am I going to have enough air to breathe for the next 3 minutes? Am I going to have enough water to drink for the next 3 days? Am I going to have food to eat for the next 30 days? That's survival stuff. So we just have to flex to what the client is needing. I would say that if that's their position, then they're probably not going to be taking a lot of calls from your competition. Or if price is all of a sudden way more important to them than service, and you're starting to catch that vibe, offer them the option. We're currently doing all of this stuff for this price. If that's not, if the service is not something that's front burner for you right now, we would be happy to dial some stuff back that you may or may not be using and adjust your revenue a little bit down to help you with your expenses. And together, we're going to get through this. And then when you are able to, you've got yourself on a little more solid footing and you're back to being able to focus on your employees' financial selves and their future and your ability to get folks to retire on time, then we'll ramp all of that back up. But, we're in this together. I'm going to help you see this through, and we're going to do what it takes to get through this.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. We do have another question that just came in. It says, do you have any ballpark estimates of what a healthy retirement plan practice should be at on a revenue FTE basis or any other headcount targets?
I do have some metrics on that is built. They're built around how much additional revenue do you need in order to afford a new employee at what rate? And I would be happy to share that. So if you'd like to just shoot me an email or give me a call, I can give that to you and talk through it a little bit. But again, this can all go back to what that billable hourly rate is, because you know what you're paying your employees, you know what it costs to keep the phones and the lights on, you know what you're paying yourself, and then throw in an extra 20% on top of that. And then you start working into your revenue line and you find out what your total billable hourly rate is and where it needs to be. And then you start taking these baby steps within the metrics that we just talked about on how to get there.
Okay, that looks like all the questions we had so far.
So thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions or follow-up you've got.